guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Belinda. Make sure to hit the subscribe button because we are on the road to 5k. Support your girl. If you've already subscribed, welcome back. So today's video is an addition to the Moving to UK series where I've been talking about, I actually brought on a guest and we discussed her experience moving to the UK. I talked about my own journey and recently moved into the visa category, basically the different visas that can help you settle into the UK. Today's visa that I'm going to talk about is a skilled worker visa. So this is for those of you who are moving to the UK to work, or you're already in the UK but you want to change your category. Maybe you came as a student and now you want to apply for the right to work. So just wanted to let you know that this is not, skilled worker visa is not the only work visa available. So there is the health and care worker visa, and that's for medical professionals. So that's not my area. I'm in tech. So I don't know much about that, but as I mentioned in my other video, gov.uk website is everything that you need basically when it comes to any eligibility requirements. If you wanted to just find out more information about what you need, but of course I do know that I can probably add in some tips from my own experience. So I have previously had the skilled worker visa. That was the route to settlement that I used. Came as a student first, then converted to the skilled worker visa. I talk about my journey at high level in this video that I'm going to link here. But there are other work visas, visas that give you the right to work that I also wasn't aware of. So there is these visas I'm going to list out, and I'll make sure I do some research and maybe do another video just covering them at high level. There are visas that you don't need a job offer to apply to. So there's like the Youth Mobility Scheme visa. There's the India Young Professional Scheme visa. The Youth Mobility Scheme visa and the India Young Professional Scheme visa are quite similar. It's just that the India one is specifically for Indians. And if you actually want me to talk about this a bit more, definitely let me know in the comment section and I'll know whether I should actually look into them. I haven't used that route, but of course I do not mind looking into them, maybe even seeing if there's anyone I know who has come through this visa, through this route. But yeah, let me know if this is something you'd be interested in. There's of course the graduate visa that never used to be there when I was in uni, but it has been introduced back. It used to be there, then it's just taken away. And now it's been reintroduced. So that means there's probably a skill gap in the market and they want to encourage international people to, stay over and work. But today's focus is going to be the skilled worker visa, which was previously called Tier 2 General. So when I was getting my initial work visa after I graduated, it was a Tier 2 General. But then when I was renewing, because normally they're 3 years long, but they can be even longer than that. But normally, for some reason, employers tend to go for the 3-year long one. Then now for that, when I was renewing, it was called the skilled worker visa, but essentially the requirements are the same. I'll talk you through what it is that you probably need to know, some tips. But of course, the Bible for when it comes to visa requirements is the gov.uk website. So yeah, skilled worker visa. So for me, I'll just go through my experience a bit and then highlight the requirements while I'm doing it. But essentially, when I was in uni in my final year, I applied for jobs. Of course, because I am Kenyan citizen, I had to apply for jobs that sponsor visa. And because of Brexit, even European nationals need to apply for the work visa now. So that means we are all in the same boat now. But at that time, it wasn't really a thing. So not many employers were advertising graduate level jobs with the option to sponsor. So I did have limited options when it came to who I can apply to for a job, but I did find at least like the big 4 audit firms, they were happy to sponsor. So at that time it was very key, and even up to now it's probably key to always ask whenever you see a job offer, job advertisement, do you sponsor visa? Because there's no point for you to go through the process if when it gets to you having the right to work, they're not able to facilitate or help you out that situation. So I got my offer, and essentially what happened, they asked for my details. They helped me, which I understand may not always be the case, but most of the time the employer will help you apply for the visa. So I was already in the UK, but I do not believe the process is any different. If you're outside the UK, there just might be a bit more additional requirements that you need. But when I was basically assigned a person from the immigration team, and they ask for your details because they need to fill in the form for you. So for me, they filled in the form for me, they submitted the form for me, the form being the application form. So essentially, before you even fill in your application form, the employer needs to apply for a course certificate of sponsorship for you. So they already should be an organization that can sponsor you. So that's the first thing. But even then, they need to apply for a course number for you. So they need to apply to sponsor you. And once they get the course certificate is when you can then go ahead and apply for your worker visa. But even that bit, they facilitated it for me. So they were basically getting my details. They need to, of course, you need to discuss start date and things like that, which they put in the form, and then they fill in the form for you. As part of this, something I found very interesting, difference between the first and second time when I was renewing my visa, difference in terms of what they needed. In the skilled worker visa now, which was new, was they needed every time I've left the UK in the last 10 years. So like my travel history, which is not something that used to be in the form previously. So I'd advise you to keep tabs of when you travel. That time, in the last 10 years, especially when I was new, I was traveling a lot in Europe because of Schengen visa that allows you to travel European countries. So there are many times I was leaving the country. I go back home also a lot, and I had to literally go through my emails for my air tickets, try and track when did I enter and leave the country. So it's good for you to keep track of your travel history because you will be asked. So yeah, that's just one thing. Other things that are just normal, your, I guess, education history, you just need to give details about yourself, your personal details, and everything else is quite straightforward. In terms of documents that you need to prove your education history. So you need like your graduation certificate. You also need, I didn't need to prove, right, to like being able to speak English because my education was in the UK. What else did I need? Of course, the job offer. You need to show that you have the job, but that's proved through the certificate of sponsorship. Actually, let me check because I don't remember needing anything more other than my details and my graduation certificate. I didn't need to show any bank statement or anything like that because I am going to work. They could see through the certificate of sponsorship that through my job I'll be able to sustain myself here. I did need to show my previous life, especially because I was applying from the UK. You need to show that you had the right to settle here. Like what up to this point, what visa have you been on? So I needed to show my previous visa. Let me also just check. I just have the gov.uk website open just to make sure I'm not missing out on any other things. But those are the main, like basically for me, genuinely, getting my skilled worker visas, tier 2 visas have been very straightforward because the employer handles everything most of the time. In terms of how long it takes for them to respond, in terms of once an application has been submitted, this has varied. So the first time when I was as a student, when they were applying for my first work visa, it took about 2 weeks. And during that period, you can't leave the country. So that was because that's how I wanted to leave the country because I just graduated, and you want to go and have fun, but I couldn't leave the country during that period because then that your application is no longer valid when you're applying from within the UK. Then the second time round, when I was renewing, it took very long, and I think that was because of the Brexit that was happening. A lot of EU settlement applications going through, flooding the Home Office, so that took 3 months. And normally maximum is 8 weeks, so that took a long time. And I remember I was quite worried because I also needed to travel that year, like to go back home, and I didn't want to, because every Christmas I tried to go back home, so that took a long time. But when I was changing jobs, that took, I think, 2 days to come back, but I also did do fast track for that one. The other times were standard applications. So another thing I can highlight there for anyone who's applying, depending on the urgency that you want to start a job with, you can decide to go the standard route, which usually takes about 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, or you can decide to do the fast track, where you pay an additional £500 and you get it within 5 days. But normally it's not usually 5 days. It's less. Like I remember I went today, tomorrow I had it. Or you can do the next day, the one where you get your response the next day. You pay about £750. and you get the next day. I would, if you have an urgency with starting this job, especially if you're applying from outside the country and you just want to start ASAP, I would say go for the 5-day one because you'll probably get it much quicker than the 5 days. Don't go for the next day one because I literally went today, the next day I had it. Especially if all your documents are, you have all the documents needed, they will get back to you very quickly. All right, so to basically qualify, I'll just go through the tick box exercise to make sure I don't leave anything out for someone who's watching this literally with your pen and paper. You just need to have basically an offer from an employer who is approved by the Home Office, so they need to be able to sponsor you. You have the certificate of sponsorship, which I explained. They apply. Once you have the offer, they need to do the first step of getting the certificate of sponsorship for you. Then is when you can actually apply. And you need to do a job. Oh, this is something that is very, very important. For them to even get the certificate of sponsorship for you, the job they're offering you needs to be on the short, what do they call that list? There are some occupations, not every occupation has few people in the UK. And then you need to be paid a certain minimum salary. So, and this your employer usually knows that. If they advertise a job and say they'll sponsor you, they know they need to pay you a certain amount as a bare minimum. So your job needs to be someone who can sponsor you. It needs to be on that list. And then you also need to get a minimum salary. Perfect. And then you have to know English, which I said, like for me, I studied in the UK, so I met those requirements. But otherwise, you can prove your knowledge of English by going and doing those international tests like IELTS. And the level that's needed will depend on the type of job that you're going for. And then how long you can stay, it's usually up to 5 years. But then normally, in my situation, I was getting 3 years. Before then, now you can go for indefinite leave to remain. But you can get up to 5-year worker visa. It would be nice if they could get you for up to 5 years. I don't know why in my case it was 3 years. And then applying, basically you apply, they'll submit on gov.uk. You can do it yourself, but normally most employers will want to work with you, like you'll be working together with an immigration consultant from that employer. But if you need to apply by yourself, as I told you, it's very straightforward. Gov.uk website has everything. It's very straight, very user friendly. I must commend how straightforward the website is. Getting a decision. Oh, I'm seeing here, if you're from outside the UK, if you're applying outside the UK, you could get your decision in 3 weeks. That's the standard processing time. But 8 weeks if you're inside the UK. So if you're inside, I was inside the UK. That's why I knew of the 8-week deadline. But actually, it's quicker if you're outside the UK. So you might not even need to pay the 5-day fast track. But I would just, if you can, especially if it's the employer who's going to meet that cost. In terms of cost, in my case, the employer met all the costs. But normally that has a catch to it. Such that if you leave within 6 months, you need to pay back the employer a certain amount. But if you leave within this, so they have but most employers, because they want you, to actually start the job, they will make the cost, but it's not always the case. And then you pay the application fee. So in terms of costs, there's the application fee, which really depends on, I guess also what category you've gone for. Have you gone for standard, fast track? And then also the health surcharge. So this is the NHS charge. This never used to be there in the past, but it is now with every visa application where you're going to stay in the UK for longer than 6 months, and you pay for every year of your visa. So this is something that is quite expensive. The price of it keeps going up. The first visa, or is it the second? The first visa, I think it was about £200 for every year. So that was about 600 in total, because it was a 3-year work visa. But in my second application, when I was extending, it was double the amount. So they keep changing. So when you apply, it can be different. And you need to prove you have enough personal savings. That's not something I had to prove because it was through, they could see my job offer met the minimum salary requirements that's needed. Okay. And yes, you can bring dependents on your work visa. That's something that is quite good to know, especially if you have a partner, if you have children, you can bring them on your work visa. Also, something that people do not know, even I did not know until I did it. You can actually change jobs. So normally your visa is tied to your sponsor. So your employer is your sponsor and you can only work for them. Unless, so depending on the job that you have, you might be able to take on a second job, but there are limitations on that second job. It has to be again on that list, probably the same category as, so your visa will be linked to your job, your employer, and also the job category. So if you've been taken on to be a consultant, for example, management consultant, you can go ahead and then just do another job that's, whatever, like, you can't just go and decide, I'm going to be a receptionist, because that job of a receptionist is not in the same category as the management consultant that you are doing. So your second job, there is limitations on what it can be. And it also cannot become your main job. You can't be doing more hours on that than on the main one. I think it's 20 hours limitation anyway on the second job. So just know that it's not easy, especially when you get your visa. You will get in your confirmation what it is you can and can't do. It's very clear, and you just need to make sure you're there to that, especially if you want to not ruin your chances of settling in the long run. You want to make sure you're abiding by your visa requirements. But you can't change jobs. What will normally happen is your new employer who you are switching to will need to apply for a new work visa for you. And I used to think it's a long process. It's not. It is literally you're changing your work visa, but they will need to apply for a new one for you. So don't feel like you are only stuck to the person who brought you here to the UK. Especially this is for my fellow watchers who maybe have come from their country to here and they feel indebted to their first employer who brought them here. Biashara ni biashara. That's what we say in hakuna urafiki in biashara in Kiswahili. There is no friendship in business. So if it is your work environment is not working for you, either progression wise or it's just toxic or whatever, don't feel that because they're the ones sponsoring your visa that you're stuck there. You can get a new job with people, especially now. Now it's so easy to get an employer who sponsors because they have to. Most of them have to. Now that with Brexit, even the European people need a work visa, so they're finding themselves having to basically sponsor most of the vacancies that they have. Yeah, wishing you all the best. Let me know what it is that you want to know about, want to know more information on. I'm also happy to bring on guests. In fact, I'm looking, there's a guest that I have in mind who can also come and talk about her experience. I'm really liking this Moving to UK series, so let me know what it is you want to know more about, and see you in the next one. Bye.